Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, today is actually my personal day off, but it appears that I'm working. And the reason for that is quite simple. It's because Kuro Games has gone ahead and released another trailer for Wuthering Waves. And this one, I've heard from the grapevine, is very good and gets into a lot of unteased characters. And so with that, we're going to go ahead, take a bit of a different reaction style compared to some of the other trailers that we've seen. Actually let it play out once completely and then kind of like go back from there to give our thoughts. Make sure you definitely let me know if this is a style that you prefer or if you like the traditional way that we typically go about these. So with that, let's go ahead. Let's get right on into it. Okay, we've got a bit of an intro with Kartithia and Rover. Is that like a... Seems like they're like passing something off. Then now we just got Rover looking over Septimons. And some good ass music. This seems like the events of 2.5 with that crystal, for Lova's Realm Beyond. I think all we gotta know, all we gotta figure out from this is that, yeah, Kuro Games needs to make an anime, boys. I would dare say that even feels better than what it looks like in-game. Alright, we got Augusta. We got the Horns of War. We got Brant. And one thing I'm noticing is that this seems like impending doom. And that seems like the Dark Tide. You know? I think there's a clear bit of symbolism there. Now we got Chuyan. Now we got Galbraina. I think that's the order of the new limited characters that are coming out. Leakers are in shambles. And now we kind of got like this Avengers Assemble moment. We got everybody, even Chacona showing up with Carlotta. Ooh. I wonder if this is all essentially a bit of like a spoiler for what's going to eventually happen in the story. Because I remember that happening in version 2.5 when we were with Frolova. I remember that happening. And I think Chisha showing up at the end over here is pretty relevant. And it's clear, right? And this is before we even do the breakdown. I actually wanted to pause a little bit while we were looking at Chuyan and while we were looking at Galbraina, because it's clear that these are the three units that were announced during that 2.4 live stream, and they haven't really shown up in the game yet. And I think it's no coincidence that this is the order that they're actually getting shown. I think that's straight in line with what their release is going to be. So you're going to have that Chuyan, that Galbraina during the middle of this sort of like war arc, and then Chisha at the end. I think she's shown there for a reason. Now, let's go ahead and start getting into, of course, right, perhaps the more important part when it comes to this, and actually start breaking this trailer down. So we're kind of just starting off with a little bit of Kartithia. We got some light hand holding going on. And what I'm kind of viewing this as is we saw a shocking lack of Kartithia through the rest of the cinematic. I think this is the only time that we see her. And it almost looks like she's kind of like passing off the responsibility of like Renacida over to Rover. That's kind of like how I view this moment. We all know that she went to the Black Shores and she's kind of like figuring stuff out, and now she's kind of like deposited in Avenolium after the end of the 2.4, 2.5 story. So for not seeing her in any of these kind of like battles or cutscenes that happen afterwards is, I mean, it's explained, but it is a little bit odd, right? That the Sentinel of Renacita, the Sentinel Resonator of Renacita, isn't really seen in any of the combat scenes from here on. I believe that this was Rover kind of like looking ahead at Septimon, and then, of course, right, kind of like a recap of some of the events that, of course, happened in the last patch with 2.5 for Lova, her Realm Beyond, and, of course, that crystal that was helping to actually form it. We all know she didn't get it. This kind of just, this entire starting sequence over here really just seems like a lot of like callbacks to what has happened in the story before. I don't think anything really new is going on over here, but once we get to this point in particular, right, where you see like Augusta over like kind of like this dusky, almost like ruined city, I think that this is the start of the actual new story reveal and what's going on. You can see it looks like she's preparing for war. I don't think it's a coincidence that you kind of have like the horns ready to blow right as like this prep scene is starting, almost as like a signal for war. And then as you keep going on, right, you see that it's not looking particularly good up in the skies. It's looking a little dark, almost as if there's a dark tide coming. And this is where we start seeing a lot of our older playable units. I think a big point of criticism for Wuthering Waves and the Wuthering Waves story so far is actually quite valid, right? We have seen the introduction of characters like Brant, like Cantarella, like Zani, and of course, right, later on, Phoebe, and it seems like these units have not really had a lot of exposure beyond the story patch that they were introduced. But now that we see that kind of like the dark tide is rolling in, this gives me like those kind of like Avengers Assemble sort of vibes. And naturally, after the crew is all gathered, you can see that the tide literally is rising while it's dark. And this is basically a recreation, right, of that terrible day in Raguna history where, you know, like the dragons came down, all of that, and then Kartithia actually died or got, you know, trapped in Avenolium before we participated in the story. So this is kind of like a crazy moment over here. You can see clearly going to war, clearly gathering the troops and getting ready to go to war. And it seems like this is going to be a battle that's fought on numerous fronts. We're starting off in Septimont and then probably returning back to Raguna right after the situation resolves over there. And that's where I think Chu Yan is probably gonna come in. This guy's been teased way back during the 2.4 live stream, and I guess it looks like he's gonna be participating in the fight against the Dark Tide as well. Same thing with Galbraina over here. I wish we got a little bit of a combat sequence with him so we could maybe see what's going on with his attribute, and maybe the type of combat he's gonna do in game. Nothing here, right? But for Galbraina, on the other hand, well, we can clearly see she's a Devil May Cry character. Yeah, she is, without a doubt, a Devil May Cry character. And if this doesn't remind you of anything from the 5th game, I don't really know what to say. This is clearly like a reference to Nero. Well, I mean, it's the one wing and the blue fire. You get it. So awesome moment over here. And this is kind of the Avengers Assemble moment that I'm talking about, right? You can clearly see we got Rosia coming back into the mix. We got Brant over here. We got Phoebe coming in. She is in way too good of a mood. I don't know why she's so happy considering everything that's going on. I'm pretty sure the city is getting invaded by TDs looking to absolutely crush it. So it's great to see all of the characters again kind of like meeting up for this what seems like a final battle. And this is the moment that I've been saying has felt like missing from the 2.0 storyline thus far, right? A bunch of like smaller stories that are slightly connected in some way, but we really haven't had like that climactic payoff of seeing all of these units teaming up together, much like what happens in games like even like ZZZ 1.4, right? Great moment for that franchise. Seeing all the different factions that you've been, you know, talking with, building up relationships with, and then meeting together for that final fight. We've been meeting up with all these people, building all those relationships, but we haven't really had that fight yet. It's kind of been a lot of smaller, slightly connected issues that we've been tackling. And so this to me is basically the end of the 2.0 arc. I think that the order that we're seeing all of these characters is essentially in line with how they're going to release, what's going to happen in the story, and you know, kind of like the development that's going to happen afterwards. I think that we're going to have the release of Chu Yan, right? Galbraina. We're going to see how they fit into the whole, like, Septimont arc, how they're going to contribute against the Dark Tide. Then we're going to have our final battle over here where, you know, Raguna as well as Septimont will be consumed by the Dark Tide. And then naturally, right, I think we're going to win. I don't think anything's going to blow up, but it is going to be cool how that resolution comes about. You can see that that the city's clearly getting swallowed. I can't wait to see what that cutscene looks like in game. And then Rover is going to come out, use some special power, right, that they used, I think, during the 2.5 story quest to, like, I guess just completely reverse, like, the power of gravity on water. We all remember when this happened. We all remember this QTE. That was when we were, like, kind of with Frolova chasing after Fenrico. Right, and then this is probably how the story over in Septimont and Raguna is going to conclude. And then I think that Chisha over here is intentionally feels like she's not related, right, to what's actually gone on in Raguna, what's gone on in Septimont. Because I think she's going to be our introduction character for the next region that's going to be coming out in Wuthering Waves after that conclusion is met over here. And so I think it is quite telling, right? That whole thing I was talking about at the start. The fact that Cartithia only shows up at the start and then doesn't show up for the rest of the trailer. We even have like right? With even like more coverage than her showing up over here. And so I think that Cartithia is probably going to be involved over here. I wouldn't be surprised if this is like some part of like her resonance ability maybe that's helping out in this situation. But I think it would be really off if she's just completely not involved. I don't think it would make a lot of sense, especially with the fact that you see all these other characters over here. But she's probably going to be somebody that shows up kind of like almost like a Deus Ex Machina. It's going to be like a on your left from like Avengers Endgame, something like that. I think that's the role that she's going to play. So yeah, those are my takes on this trailer. I know that this was a different way for us to kind of like react and look at the material. Definitely let me know if you preferred this or if you're more in line with us kind of just like going through, pausing, giving our thoughts, and then moving forward from there. I gotta say that this trailer has some awesome music and of course some of the best visuals that we've seen in sort of like this anime 2D art style. And I gotta say, Kuro Games, I think it's time to release some like 5-10 minute animated shorts along this line of animation, because I think you can probably tell from the massive amount of views that it's gotten in just 12 hours and the glowing feedback everyone else has given. People really like this shit. So yeah, that'll be that, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you all thought about this one, and peace out.